found that idea that beliefs could continue on well beyond other people, I found that fascinating. And there's many that we all know, right? Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, there's all these different ones. For example, there was a prince in India born around 560 BCE by the name of Siddhartha. And he lived in luxury because he was a prince and an opulence, and his father did not want him to have any wants in the world. And so he lived within his castle, and everything was brought to him, maid servants and extravagant foods and anything he wanted. One day, he left the palace and he saw an elderly man on the side of the road. He saw a sick person, and then he also saw a dead body and a wandering monk. And that left him with a thought. He thought that although there are all these luxuries in life, there is still aging, sickness, and death. And all of those things are forms of suffering. And I believe that Siddhartha then left the comforts of his palace so that he could see if he could find a way to end even that suffering. And the traveling monk was an ascetic monk, meaning that they foregone all earthly possessions in pursuit of a spiritual life. So what do most of us do when we go too far on an extreme side of the spectrum? We many times flip to the other side, right? So this young dude named Siddhartha was living in opulent luxury, and then he went to the opposite side of the spectrum, thinking that that's where he would find his idea, his enlightenment, his answers to why is there suffering. And the idea that he wanted was to get rid of all of the wants, all of the sufferings. And so he decided to get rid of all of these earthly possessions, because if there was no earthly possessions, I would stop wanting and having any desires. There'd be no yearning, and inherently that yearning creates suffering, right? It's the feeling of I want, it shows me that I don't have, and that creates suffering. Okay, so he was looking to see if he could even alleviate that. So he fasted, he meditated, he gave up everything. And really, to the point of almost death, he meditated and practiced his spiritual ascension. But every time that he stopped meditating, he would come back to this relative reality and be surrounded by suffering. And it wouldn't stop. And he thought that if he could continue to meditate, maybe it would, but it didn't, because every time he came back down, he'd look around and there it was, suffering in its many different forms. So eventually he got so malnourished that he almost died, and a young girl came up to him and gave him, and saw that he was suffering, and quietly, because he wouldn't ask for anything. And so this young girl gave him some rice pudding. And unlike him, he ate it. He ate it, and it restored his strength almost immediately, right? Because he's on the brink of death, folks. He's on the brink of death. Eat some rice pudding. So then with this renewed strength, he sat under a Bodhi tree, and it was at that point he meditated, and that's when he became enlightened. And that's when he formulated his first lessons in Buddhism. And this is the story of Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama Buddha, to which he founded Buddhism, and he started to go back to some other aesthetics and teach what he had done, what he had understood. Why do I like this story? I like this story because it shows that there's two kinds of suffering. There's the necessary suffering, like aging and illness and death, but then there's also unnecessary suffering. This is the cravings that we have, the pain that we inflict on ourselves, like in the circumstances of not eating in a healthy way, right? And that in life, to try to avoid the unnecessary suffering would be like trying to survive without eating or breathing. It's impossible. The other thing that I like about this story is that the Buddha was just some dude. And he was a righteous dude just like you and me. And believing things that were actually hurting him and not knowing. So he was believing that he could go and attain these things and didn't realize that that's actually what was causing the suffering. What it does for me is it humanizes some of these incredibly powerful teachings in Buddhism. My mission, why I also relate to this personally, is my mission is to end what I call unnecessary suffering. And today we see that in the form of the monkey chatter of the mind, the toil that we put ourselves through, the agonizing back and forth that we toggle between on any and all topics. Like, should I pick up the phone and call them? Am I being a burden? Will I offend them? Why can't I have more? I just want more, right? All of these, my goal is to end unnecessary suffering that goes on in my world. And my world is the thing that happens between my ears, but it's also the things that I'm surrounded by. I want it for everyone. And I also know that some people are not ready to take that level of responsibility that it takes to end their suffering. They have their reasons and they keep in their ways. And I do hope that they see that there are others that are not suffering as much and think to themselves, I am ready and I am willing to take the steps to face some facts and make some healthy and sometimes harder choices. Those that choose to use necessary suffering to end their unnecessary suffering, I believe are on a path towards their version of enlightenment. And I believe that is a beautiful and noble cause. I understand that a lot of what I just talked about was very theoretical. And I hope that it creates a framework for you to see the world possibly through a new lens. If you double click into that, what that means for you is it's about the money goals that you have, or the relationship dreams you seek, or maybe just the end of the constant worry or anxiety that have become so common in your day-to-day. That's the suffering that I want to end within myself and within those that want to make the healthy and sometimes harder choices. And then the fun part about that is, did I mention that I'm president of Productive Learning? And that is what our company at its core does. We look to end the unnecessary suffering, and we trick you by saying that we can help you have a better sex life with your partner, ascend your company ladder, communicate with confidence. All of that is true, but the path to those outcomes is by way of ending the internal suffering that you have. And those of you that are listening and participating are on that path. So I thank you very much. With all of that, I've got a quick question to start us off. Who here thinks you're in control of your life? By show of hands. Good. Okay. Some of you. And the rest of you, looks like you don't feel like you're in control. Well, today, that's good. Fine. I'm going to ruin your perception of free will. You're not in control, and you're welcome. That's the end of this whole masterclass, folks. That's the end point. And now I'm going to show you how we get to that end point. All right, here we go. We think we're making conscious choices, but most of our decisions are actually just automatic. If I told you that everything, who you date, how much money you make, even whether you speak up in this meeting, isn't actually your conscious choice. It's being controlled by something hidden beneath the surface. Dun, dun, dun. Enter the iceberg. There's supposed to be like music and like Titanic music or something right there. No, sorry. So everyone has seen this model, I am sure. And if you haven't, welcome to the rest of your life. This is amazing. Here we go. What's above the water line in this metaphor of the mind is the conscious mind. The conscious mind is that which we are privy to, that which we are aware of. We understand, we can answer questions, and we can tell you what we're thinking and what we're feeling using our conscious mind. What is underneath the surface level is the unconscious mind. That is what is not seen of the iceberg. It's underneath the waterline. What is underneath the waterline are your beliefs and fears and habits and past experiences and the mass of the iceberg. The mass of the iceberg is the thing that is moving the iceberg. The wind on top of the surface is not the thing that moves the iceberg. It is the movement under the water that moves the iceberg where it goes. It's the same concept, or metaphorically the same concept as the mind. The conscious mind can tell you what's going on. The unconscious mind is actually doing the what's going on. That's what's making the decisions and choices. The conscious mind is rationalizing and tell you that you did make the choice, but that is post-action justification. Follow me on this? Nods of head. Yes. Lyndon, you're doing great. Cool. Thanks, guys. Good, good. So, metaphorically speaking, and pretty close to what's accurate, is what's above the waterline and seen of this iceberg is just about 10% of the iceberg. What's unconscious to us and what is below the waterline of the iceberg is about 90%. That means 10% of our brain is aware of what the heck is going on. 90% of our brain is actually functioning at an unconscious level. It is thinking about yesterday's conversation with your spouse. It's thinking about what you're going to do tonight with your kids. It's thinking about the fact that, you know, we're halfway through the month. Did I get my paycheck yet? It's having all of those thoughts, whether you're conscious to it or not. Okay? Now, here's what people don't realize. The beliefs and fears and habits and past experiences that are your conscious also reside in the unconscious. So you are cognizant of some of those beliefs and fears and past experiences, but they are larger, they have more tentacles, they carry more emotional weight behind them, and that means they are swaying the decisions and choices of your life. It's like a middle school linebacker. Let me go back to this metaphor. It would be like a middle school linebacker deciding to go right, and yet the unconscious part of your mind would be like an NFL star linebacker that wants to go left. They have generally the same thoughts and thinking and movement. Hey, squat, push forward, shoulders this way, hands like that. But who is going to win out? Not the middle school linebacker, right? The NFL linebacker is going to win. That's who's going to move this thing. That's what we're having to deal with. We're having to deal with the skill, the strength, the speed of an unconscious mind, in metaphor of an NFL linebacker going up against a middle school linebacker. The unconscious will always win. So if you're feeling stuck, like you keep repeating the same patterns, like you're hitting the same roadblocks, you're struggling to create some type of real change, it's not about trying harder. The middle school linebacker can't try harder and beat the NFL linebacker. It doesn't matter the kind of coaching that happens to that middle school linebacker. What we have to do is we have to calm the unconscious part of our mind down, which means that the emotional reactions start to go down, which means that that NFL linebacker won't want to push that way anymore. That's the way to do it. It's not going to we're not going to say, let's use more discipline. Let's wake up a little bit earlier. Let's try to push and do, instead of 15 calls a day, let's try to get 18, because 3 more in a week would be 15 more in a week. And then we could get more sales. And then maybe if I make my wife some dinner, maybe then she'll want to do these things that's discipline, folks. That's not going to do it. That's not going to change the trajectory of your life because you're still functioning out of a belief run by the unconscious. And we need to bring those beliefs to the surface. So I see some of you nodding. Good. This is great. Okay. Here's what you many times think that you are in control of. The job you choose. Do you think you really chose that job? The relationship you're in or you're not in? How you react to stressful situations? Oh yeah, I'm gonna call them and tell them a piece of my mind. No, I'm not gonna do that. I'm better than that. I'm gonna take the higher road. All of that are just justifications and rationalizations for what the unconscious is saying. This is what you should do. How much money you earn, the goals that you set, the level of confidence you have in social settings or the lack thereof, the risks you take even when you want to, but you don't, how you perceive and respond to feedback or criticism, your physical health. You think those are conscious choices that you're making on your physical health? Sure, if you got some discipline, there could be some. But your status quo, those are unconscious beliefs and constructs that are framing your worldview. And then you live within them and you rationalize why they are the way that they are. Or how about some of you? Your ability to relax and just enjoy, or your inability to relax and just enjoy. Most people believe that they are making these decisions rationally and consciously, when in reality, they're often just acting out of subconscious programming. They are learned behaviors. They're deep-seated fears, they're deep-seated beliefs, and we are using the conscious mind to just assess what has happened. Does everyone get when I say the post-action justification? That means it already happened, and then we're just saying why it happened. We're not actually intending for something new to happen. So what's actually in control is the beliefs that you absorbed when you were a kid, the unconscious rules that you never questioned because they are seen as capital T truths. Don't move beyond this. This is how it is. This is who you are in your relationships. This is who you are in your belief about your weight and your physique and your health. These are the beliefs that are holding us. All of these are running the surface if left unchecked. And we like to believe that we're making these conscious choices, but we are, again, we are functioning out of these deep-seated influences. For example, have you ever wondered why two people can experience the exact same situation, but react completely differently to it? One person gets constructive criticism and thinks, great, I'll improve. And another person hears it and thinks, I knew it, I'm a failure. It's the same event, right? Just different reactions. Why? Because their icebergs are different. So for example, I have a sister named Dana. Back in 2001, Disney's California Adventure Park opened up. And if you recall, soon thereafter, they had the California Screamin' roller coaster open up, which was the first like real roller coaster at Disneyland. That's if you don't consider Thunder Mountain Railroad a roller coaster, which, you know, it's a roller coaster, but it's still pretty small, right? Anywho, I love roller coasters, and I especially loved them when I was a kid. I like Six Flags, I like Busch Gardens, I like Knott's Berry Farm. My sister, though, she did not. But I convinced her that this was Disneyland. These are just kiddie rides. It's super easy. Even though you can see the loop-de-loop, it's no big deals. Let's do it. So I got her on the ride. Boom, we blast off. I'm psyched. I'm screaming. She's terrified. She's screaming. We get off the ride. I'm all jazzed up, and she can barely walk. She is quite literally trembling walking off the ride. And what was so memorable, I don't know if they still do it this way, but what was so memorable is the route that you exit off the ride goes right by the line getting into the ride. So I'm holding my sister up, walking by, smiling as my sister has tears and is crying. And I'm giving everybody thumbs up saying, it's great, guys. Go for it. You'll have a great time. Anywho, that is just an example. Maybe it's a horrible example, but you get the idea. It's an example of how our internal world is dictating the experiences that we are actually having from our external world. My internal world said thrill, excitement, and joy. And my sister Dana's internal world said mayday, abort, abort. Right? Okay. This is where we're going to shift to be slightly more uncomfortable, because I realize that we're all on autopilot. And it's not to say that we shouldn't be in some capacity. The brain and evolution has said that 10% is conscious, 90% is unconscious, and you're not going to change evolution in a single lifespan, right? It took millennia and millennia and millions of years to create what we got going on right here, okay? So let's get personal. Your mind loves making assumptions. If you want to, you can go back to WTF is Running My Life, the masterclass that I did last month to understand more about assumptions. And it does go, but I'm going to go into this real quickly. Our brain is obsessed with efficiency. It's part of the evolutionary desire of this system. It hates uncertainty. It loves predictability. Even if the predictable thing is bad for you, uncomfortable for you. Uncertainty creates fear, and it is an area of the unknown that the system is not primed or ready to experience, because unknown has a tendency or an ability to trigger the evolutionary survival instincts of this human system. The known, we have lived through it, and the system says, I can keep going through it, even when it's uncomfortable. So instead of reevaluating situations objectively, your brain takes what happened in the past and it assumes that it will always be true. If it lived through it once and then it did it a couple more times, let's just assume that that is going to always be true. And we do not need to use the precious resources of this conscious brain. Let's put it down into the very effective or efficient resources of the unconscious brain and create mental shortcuts. If it smells like it, if it looks like it, if it sounds like it, it's probably like it was. So just do what we learned before. Everybody follow? Yes, good, fantastic. This is why people repeat patterns in relationships. Why is it that when we go into a new job, eventually after some point, we seem to have the same kind of relationship dynamics? Yeah, the boss that's a dick. Yeah, nobody that supports me. I have to do it all on my own. Why am I the one bringing the rest of the team on? Oh, and I'm going to move to a new job, and lo and behold, now I've got an asshole for a boss, and I actually found myself in a silo. I'm doing it all alone again. It looks like it's a different playing field, but boy, it's just different. It's a different design of the chess pieces. It's the same game, folks. It's the same game. Why? Because the brain says, I have to repeat the same thing. That's when I know that I am safe. That's when I know that I should continue forward. If it's something new, the system says, mayday, abort, abort. Your system starts to act like my sister Dana going on a roller coaster. Okay. Why does this happen, though? Why does this happen? Exhibit B. All right. Now you guys see some cool stick figures that I just drew an hour ago? Cool. All right. This is going to be my example of what is actually happening in the brain and in our human system. This is you. or better known as me. This is some type of stimulus. It does not matter. I'm putting this as a human, but heck, this could be a phone call, the ringing of your cell phone. This could be the bill that came in. This could be the paycheck that came in. This could be the number on the scale when you weigh yourself in the morning. It's some external stimulus. Okay. Now, as we were growing up, what we talked about in WTF is Running Our Life from the last masterclass, we talked about the formation of a lot of these beliefs, similar to what this unconscious iceberg effect that we're talking about is all of those beliefs start to come into our system, or I should say, all these stimulus come into our system, and our system starts to formulate and make sense out of them and turn them into a worldview, into a belief system, into rules, into filters for why and how the world functions the way that it does, why and how I am in this position in the world in relationship dynamics with all these other things. And it starts to formulate this worldview that is encapsulated or symbolized by this circle around me. Now, as we continue to go through the world, this thing that's being formalized, these belief systems, are now the filtering process for how we bring in new information. So when we look at the scale today, what is happening is that it is coming into our worldview, but it is going through a filter system. And when it goes through that filter system, it doesn't actually tell us what the real world is. It goes through some filtering of our worldview, of our iceberg. And that's what we pick up from the system. And there are certain things, actually, I should do it this way. There are certain things where it comes into our worldview and we just don't see it as that, and we disregard it. For example, those of us that have low self-esteem, when you get a compliment, do you praise the other person and thank them? Or do you brush it off and brush them off and downplay it? Yeah, you know who you are, right? That's because there's a worldview you have of yourself and of others and of compliments and of acknowledgement of who you are. And some part of your worldview says, nope, that's not for me. So I'm going to essentially just disregard that from the world. This is like the example I'm sure some of you have heard. There's some statistics about those that win the lottery and become multimillionaires. And within a certain amount of years, a very short amount of time, they burn through their tens of millions of dollars because they have a worldview that their net worth is $1 million, that they make $100,000 a year. So when all of a sudden they bring in $30 million, it is against their worldview. And most can't reconcile that. And the way that, or I should say, the way that they do reconcile that is they burn it all. They bet it all on black and they lose it. It's all gone. Now, the very interesting part is there's some stimuli that come into our worldview. It goes through our filter, but we still don't actually see what it is in truth because it's been warped through our filters, through our iceberg. And so what we're trying to figure out is, what is this? What is this iceberg on all of us? And what is it doing as it to the stimulus and to the information coming into us? And when it's whatever it's doing, how is it also affecting how we think and view our relationships to people, to money, to work, to our health and well-being? Because it is warping the information, and then it is also manipulating it in how it's being processed. That's what your worldview, that's what your iceberg is doing. Follow me? Yes, Lyndon, I do. Fantastic. Good. Okay. Everybody open for a little story as an example? Yeah, Lennon, your stories are good. Cool. Great. I, I feel like I have to talk to myself on these things because I know you guys are not supposed to. You're supposed to be all muted and stuff. So I'll answer my own questions. So I was a fairly gifted young athlete. Those of you that know, I come from a lineage of professional athletes. And then combined with that, I was also incredibly shy and insecure. Actually, I'm not even sure how much of a gifted athlete I was, more so that I had an early growth spurt. And so I was much taller and stronger than most other kids my size, simply because I hit puberty early or earlier than most. Anywho, because I was this way going into high school, the varsity soccer coach took a gamble on me as a freshman and put me on the varsity team. And I think I was like the third in San Clemente High School to be a freshman on the varsity team. So it was seen, it was supposed to be seen, you'll see where this goes. It was supposed to be seen as a very prestigious acknowledgement of my skills. He had a belief that he could groom me early and then I would dominate my junior and senior year and captain the team, and we would become successful, and it would be this wonderful legacy that I would essentially start. Well, that wasn't my belief systems of myself. I was, as I said, a very insecure, and I didn't believe that I was good, and especially that I was anything close to a leader and that anybody would want to follow me. So when the varsity coach asked me to come up to varsity from Frosh Soft, I went to my dad and I literally pleaded him to go talk to the coach to not join the team. And in his wisdom, he said, that's something you'll have to take up with the coach, not me. So he went with me to the coach's office, again, because I was too scared to do it myself. And I proceeded to plead to not be on the varsity coach or on the varsity team. I'm sorry. And long story short from that, the varsity coach said, thanks, but no thanks. You're being on the team. We're going to figure this out. But it is such a poignant example of my mind's iceberg and what my beliefs about myself growing up and against the outside reality and my inside reality not aligning. You follow that? I couldn't believe myself to be the person that others saw me as. I fought against it. Because I'll also explain that the dissonance that one feels when their internal beliefs contradict with their external world is immense. It is not a state that most of us can live in without intentionally putting ourselves there and without structure and support around us to know what to do with. Because when there is dissonance between what I believe internally is right and what the external world is, one of them has to cave. And what happens is if this internal world caves and we go along with the external world, it loses a sense of agency. Or if we go with the internal world, like for example, for mine, we go with the internal world and we don't do what the external world is, we just then limit ourselves to only the extent of what we can believe about who we are. And so for high school and then in college, I was skilled, but so incredibly scared and nervous and shy that I could not ever step up and lead. It wasn't until I actually started taking these workshops from my dad, of all people, that I started to realize, oh, let me change my internal world because my external world is telling me something different. And I also just don't like my internal world. So what we need to do is work on living within that dissonance and seeing with intentionality, how do we want to shift it to serve a higher purpose, a more noble goal, a more mature and aligned perspective or pursuit that goes towards our mission and in alignment with our personal values. That's the goal of understanding the iceberg of ourselves and then what to do with it. I don't care. It doesn't matter within productive learning where you focus on. It's the fact that what you're doing is you're focusing on all of that internal suffering, to bring it back to that beginning story about the Buddha. That internal suffering is what keeps us from going and actualizing something from the outside that we want. Follow me? Cool. Okay. Now, think about the way that you see the world. Your rules and your filters, your judgment. Where did those come from? Who taught you that? What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to pick an area of your life, an area that you want to improve in, one that maybe you're not happy with, something that you want more of. You know, for example, this is your internal suffering. For using that language. This could be your finances. This could be your relationship, in work, outside of work. This could be in your career. Pick an area of your life. What would you like to improve? Where's the area that you experience the most internal suffering? Is that your relationship with your daughter? Is that your health and weight? Is that your personal finances? Do you always feel behind? Like you're just getting by? Everybody got something? Okay. So then I got something. Good. Now, I want you to think back. If you want to close your eyes, you can close your eyes, but think back and think about what were the beliefs that were around you regarding this topic. Anything close or tangential. What were the beliefs that mom had about this? What were the beliefs that dad had, or your brother or your sisters, or your priests that preached to you about it, or teachers at school? What was said, what was heard, what was believed, and maybe you still believe it to this day. That doesn't matter. But I want to go back in time to anything that you can recall that the beliefs were. I'm looking for the marinade that you were living and soaking in growing up. What was that flavored with? If it's about money, what were parents talking about money? If it's about relationships, what did you see or witness about relationships? Write as many of those things down as comes to mind. The more you come up with, the more gold stars I'll give you. Okay. Everybody got beliefs that they can remember mom or dad talking about. Maybe you recited it to yourself. Maybe it was your priest or rabbi that said, hey, this is the way that the world turns. This is how it works. This is who you are. And some of them could have been wonderful and nice and beautiful. Some of them could have been well-intended. We're just looking for the marinade. This is the beginning of your iceberg. This is the beginning of that filter, that worldview from my stick figure model that is starting to control the way, it's not starting to, it is controlling your life. These beliefs came in and marinated with the innocence and the naivety of the 4 and the 8 and the 12-year-old that you were, with the emotional maturity of that 4, 8, and 12-year-old that you were. And it formulated constructs, rules, ways of being, limitations to what you can and cannot do. And that solidified over the decades for you to now, when any contrasting information comes in, your system deflects it off, doesn't even take it in, even if you consciously say that you want it. This is why many of us continue to have the same goal year over year over year, but we don't seem to be getting closer to it or achieving it, because the yearning and the lack of has become what is familiar to us. The wanting of it and not having is the worldview. That is become what it is. So any opportunity that could get you out of it, I bet you disregard it and you don't even realize it. Any compliment that would say that you actually have something different, you disregard and say, well, that's a one-off. They love me, so they're just telling me that. That is the part of the marinade. This is what's controlling your life. So again, your free will shot. Psh, adios, Nietzsche. Gone. No free will. Just kidding, guys. Come on. These are the beliefs. These are the filters. These are the constructs that you have. And you see that many of us don't even realize that we are living them out. This is the unnecessary suffering that I want to end within you. I want to talk through this with anyone that wants to, that is listening or that is participating here. I want to talk through this with you so that you can understand the worldview that you live in and the suffering that it is causing you unnecessarily. I want to support you in finding this within yourself so that you can unshackle yourself from these limiting beliefs. I am going to offer, as I do, a free 30-minute coaching session to work through some of this. And those that want to fully dive in, you'll be able to join us for our Beyond Reasons workshop that's coming up, which I can also support you in registering for if you want. And I would also encourage you, anyone that you see that is suffering unnecessarily, but that also sees or you believe they have a desire to change, a true, genuine desire to change, pass this recording on to them. Let them know that this is all their own monkey chatter. They're all their own worldview. It's all their own shackles that are having them suffer unnecessarily, and that there is a way out. A common dude named Siddhartha Gautama became the enlightened Buddha, which to me means that some random dude named Lyndon can also achieve such incredible measures. And any one of you could also do the same. And productive learning, I think, is the route for you to then go and achieve whatever that is. So if you want to have that free coaching call, or if you want to talk about the Beyond Reasons workshop that is coming up in both Northern and Southern California for yourself and or for your friend or for your coworkers or for your entire team at work, email me, Lyndon A at productivelearning.com, and just say, let's talk. Let's get into it. Let's go. And I will be super happy because, as I said, my personal mission is to end unnecessary suffering within my world. And you are all in my world. It's not just within my own system, it is within you as well. So that would be a pleasure to me to have these conversations with you and to see you and your coworkers and your family in a Beyond Reasons. Thank you all very much for being with me today and listening to my stories. I appreciate you all. I love you all. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.